I want to get into the whole Federal Bureau of Prisons
Okay.
from the day of the sentencing, the conviction, the sentencing, and what took place for John's stay. We'll call it a stay, incarceration in the custody of the Bureau of Prisons. So John gets convicted, and the presiding judge on the case, Judge Ileo Glassa,
Mhm.
on a direct commit. You know what a direct commit is, Joe.
No, what is that, Louis? Remind
Uh,
the audience.
in other words, federal judges have so much power, as you see today in their battles with President Trump. They have unchecked, crazy, crazy power. So Glasser ordered John as a direct commit to the custody of the Federal Bureau of Prisons in Marion, Illinois. Now, at the time of that direct commit, let me explain that. Most of the time, you get sentenced. You're in the MCC or wherever you are, wherever you're starting at, and they assess you and they rate you. Okay, we all know John was going to be a level 5 incarcerated person, which is higher than a USP. So your viewers know it's an ADX kind of a thing, like Florence, Colorado, although they didn't have it at the time. So the institution the government used was Marion. Marion was a level 6, and that was the ADX for the United States.
Okay, thank you for telling everybody.
Right. So from the MCC, he went by private Bureau of Prisons plane directly to Marion. No other institution. He did not pass go and get $100. He went from New York, private jet, right to Marion.
Wow.
No reception area, nothing else. That was on a direct order from Judge Glasser. Of course, that's what the government wanted. Mm-hmm. And Judge Glasser, being the government judge that he is, and being their boy, so to speak, their judge, he did that. So what that means is that they took John out, put him in Marion, one-man cell. For the first 60 days, no telephonic communication at all. Zero. No visits. Because in order to get visits in the Bureau of Prisons, if your name is not in the probation report, you have to go to your counselor. You have to get a form to request a visitor.
That's right.
That's the way it is. And as we all know from being incarcerated, the counselors take a long, long time. It's part of their method. So in John's probation report, or PSI, his family was named in there, the wife, the kids, etc. So they were allowed the visits, but not for 2 months. Not for 2 months. So in that time frame, everybody was writing. And in that time frame, John needed glasses. So the BOP would not permit glasses to come in. So what I had to do was I had to go to an eye doctor. I had to get a letter. I had to send the letter into the BOP at Marion to the warden requesting permission to send the glasses in. So I got the glasses from John Jr. John at that time was living in Massapequa. So we were all scouring around for the extra glasses. I had a few pair, but I had given those to John when he was in the MCC pre-trial. And like everything else, they're supposed to pack up your belongings, and your belongings are supposed to follow you to whatever institution you go to.
That's
but
right.
As you know, Joe, and I know, Joe, that doesn't take place. And if it does take place, it's 3 to 4 to 5 months later that you get your belongings. So, of course, John didn't get any of his belongings from the MCC to Marion. Zero. So finally,
even before I just want to just cut in for 1 second. I want everybody to realize what Louis is saying is 100% accurate. Both of us were in prison, and we know exactly what goes on. And I know people out there are going, oh, they can't do that, or they don't want to believe it. But believe it from Lewis's mouth and from my mouth. I'm sorry, Lewis. I just want to let everybody know, because some people will think like, oh, how do they do that to you? I mean, they can do anything they want to you once you're in the Bureau of Prisons. So go ahead,
Correct.
Lewis. I don't want to
Correct.
cut you off. I just want to let people
No,
know.
listen, people that comment, John Q. Citizen, it doesn't work the way you think it works.
That's right.
They do what they want. Your family has no say in nothing, zero. And if you push too much, you'll wind up in the shoe. If you carry on too much, you'll get a beating. So
Yep.
you got to be very careful when you're incarcerated.
That's right.
Okay?
Great point.
The guards are worse than the inmates in many cases.
That's right.
Remember what I'm telling you.
Mhm.
First year correction officers are making $35,000 to $40,000 a year from the federal government. That's not money. That's not a lot of money. So a lot of these guys are sadistic and crazy. So if you push too hard or you go to your counselor too much, you'll get the worst job. You'll get assaulted at night. You won't have toilet paper. They torture you.
That's
So
right.
you got to be careful what you wish for. So to get back to John, so finally, I got a hold of his counselor, and I told his counselor the story in there. And they know, but by the time I was calling, the counselor knew I was calling and why I was calling. They know everything. You're not fooling them. You're not tricking them. You're not, because they don't trust. We're lowlifes to them. We're inmates to them. We're garbage to them. That's how they're brainwashed by the federal government. Inmates are all garbage. That's how they look at it. And some inmates are garbage.
That's
but
true.
Some inmates are not garbage. There's extenuating circumstances.
Right.
So finally, they give me a shipping number, an authorization, and a box where to ship the glasses. After I have all that and do all that and confirming back and forth in emails, it still takes 90 days for him to be in possession of the glasses. So it took a total of 6 months for Junior and myself to get him the glasses in Marion.
Wow. That's terrible.
6 months.
That's terrible. Regular glasses so he could see.
Regular glasses so he could see, so he could write letters. Because remember, when you're locked up, they say you're out for an hour a day. You're locked up 24/7.
Yeah.
Basically, that's what it is. The
That's
guards will come late. Oh, we're sorry, we're late. We had an emergency.
Yep.
The sixes went off, threes went off, the red light went off. It's all bullshit.
It is. You're right.
That's another method to torture because they know you're waiting for that hour.
Of course.
To go into a yard that's screened in, and it's called a bird cage.
Right.
They know you're waiting for that hour.
Yeah, for some fresh air. Yep.
And remember, John was what they called an escort inmate. He could not be moved without a lieutenant and 2 COs.
Right.
Okay?
Yep.
Because of his high profile status. So we'll get into that alleged assault that took place. So ultimately, we get him the glasses. His family goes on the visits. His counselor, after John requested it multiple times, sends me a visitation form. And you can't FedEx in the BOP. You have to only use the postal service. So I do express mail back to his counselor to get approved. Approval denied. I'm a threat to institutional security.
Another bullshit line.
They didn't want me to visit John.
That's right.
So they deem you a threat to institutional security. What was I going to do? Break him out of Marion?
Yeah, it's a joke.
What was I going to do? Break into Marion?
Yeah. Ridiculous.
It was ridiculous. But we would talk regularly. And once I got the momentum, I got to meet a lot of the correctional officers, and all the COs love John. That's just how John was not a complainer. John was not a bullshit artist. Mm-hmm. John did his time. I don't know how John did the time that he did.
Yeah.
being so sick. So as time goes by, and keep in mind, I'm still flying out to Marion on a regular basis. He wanted me to fly out there whether I got in or not. And I flew out weekend, every other weekend, all the time, whether I got in or not. I would drop Junior off, me and Johnny Boy Ruggiero, who couldn't get in either, drop John off. We'd sit in the parking lot, and we got to know the COs.
Mm.
And I would see the COs always walking with thermos bags. Those thermos bags that are insulated, that you put food in, you put your beverages in. So one day, I said to one of the COs, I says, "Why do you guys come to work with these thermos insulated bags?" They says, "You can't drink the water here. The water's infected. The water is diseased in this
Really?
institution." I says, "Why is that?" He says, "Well, back in the day during war and during army time, during that time period in our country, they buried the transformers that you see on telephone poles. They buried those in Marion. And it was declared a toxic website by the federal government. Yet the federal government built a prison on a toxic website."
Unbelievable what they get away with.
So once I saw the correction officers with the bag, I'd say to John, "Don't drink that water."
Mm-hmm.
He says, "Well, what am I going to drink?" So for the period of time that John was incarcerated there for years, he was drinking that water. And then he started not to feel good. There was constant written communication, constant telephonic communication between me and him. And keep in mind, I was still flying out to Marion.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would get, communication from whoever was going on the visit. And he started not to feel good. And I said to him, we had spoken, he had implants, and I had said in his mouth. And the dentist warned us that, it may be a problem through incarceration, because in those days you had to have your implants cleaned.
Mm-hmm.
So I talked to his counselor, and I started to have somewhat of a communication. We can't call it a relationship because you're only deluding yourself. It was just communication that I had with him, because he knew that I would step it up if he didn't communicate. And ultimately I did step it up, but we'll get to that. So I said to him, I said, his name was Combs. I said to him, "Mr. Combs, he's not feeling good." I says, "He's not complaining to you people, but I could hear the way he's talking. He's not feeling good." He says, "Well, we're sending him to when he goes on sick call." I says, "He won't go on sick call. But I'm telling you, he's not feeling good." So they sent the PA, physician's assistant, in to see him. Now, I then learned later that the man wasn't a physician's assistant, but he was a first aid guy, just trained in first aid. And he also had the contract. He was an undertaker, and he had the contract to bury any of the inmates that died in Marion.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.